Well, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. Hope we meet you well. Okay, let's go over to the situation in Plateau State, so to speak, although you know all of this, we're talking politics now, being controlled by the Court of Appeal in Abuja, where the table has been turned, and the incumbent governor in Plateau State, Mr. Caleb Mutfwang, he's been asked to, well, INEC has been asked to withdraw his certificate of returns and a fresh one be prepared and be issued to the candidate of APC, Nentawe Goshwe. This naturally has led to jubilation from the APC side, but we'll see how all of that goes. It might well be that there's an appeal in the offing, but we don't know. Let me introduce my guest this morning, and that's Mr. Joseph Ode. Mr. Ode is a former Deputy State Chairman, APC Presidential Campaign Council, Field Operations Directorate. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Mr. Yori, for having me.
Thank you very much. Yori will do, please. Thank you very much for coming on.
That's fine.
Okay, so, it's good to one, but it's not going to be good to another. As you know, there's been an appeal. The long story short, if one can ever make legal stories short, is that it's been determined that indeed the APC does have the right to question these matters, even though that right had been, scuttled, if you want, at the initial hearing, where it was said that the APC was, it had no locus. But then it's been determined at a higher court that, that is the Court of Appeal, that is not the case. And there's this whole, I won't call it complication, this whole issue to deal with, which is that this whole matter of sponsorship of an election can be both a pre and a post election matter. So again, a fine morning to you. You are of APC. How do you see this? Because the figures are such that, well, the APC candidates had 481 votes, 81,000 votes odd, to the incumbent governor and PDP candidates 525,000. Now, if this stands, that could be overturned. How do you feel about this?
Well, I think apart from my APC affiliations, I feel we should be objective about it and see it from the perspective of adherence to the provisions of the Constitution and the Electoral Act.
Okay.
So it's more a case of constitutionality and obedience to the law here. And it should be of interest to Nigerians that the courts are upholding the provisions of the law as shown in this case. So as it stands presently, yes, APC is on the positive side, on the benefiting side of this, and we are all excited. But beyond it being an APC thing, we should be more happy that, okay, it's about the law being seen to be working. Even though the other side, being at the bad side of it, holding the short end of the stick, sort of not happy about it. But you can't blame anybody for them not putting their own house in order.
Okay, because Justice Frida Williams Daudu cited Section 177 of the Constitution and held that the governor was not validly sponsored by the PDP for the election, and furthermore that the PDP had not complied with a subsisting High Court order. So all of these led to the situation. But you know what? We have a report that was put together by our own Jane. So let's take that report to further flesh out the background to this story.
The appellate court in its judgment delivered on Sunday, 19th November, ordered the Independent National Electoral Commission to recognize Nentawe Goshwe of the APC as the validly elected governor of Plateau State in the March 18 governorship election. The lead judge of the three-member panel, Justice Frida Daudu, while delivering the judgment, cited Section 177 of the Constitution, stating that Mutfwang did not emerge as a PDP candidate through a legitimate process. The court dismissed the decision of the Plateau State Tribunal, ruling that the issue of qualification is both a pre-election and post-election matter. A contrast to the tribunal's finding that the appellant lacked the locus to contest the validity of the respondent.
Actually formulated grounds that restricted themselves to the issue of sponsorship. And we raised the issue that what is being had in this court is different from what the tribunal had. The tribunal had a case of nomination and sponsorship and made a finding on it. Appeals are by way of rehearing. You cannot make a case and the tribunal tries a case at the lower tribunal based on one or two issues, and you come to the Court of Appeal and you change the game.
Punishment for disobedience is what has happened today. We have always remained calm for today, a day like this. We appreciate God. This is a victory for Plateau State.
The appeal was thoroughly addressed. We thank the victory. Like the chairman said, it is a victory for Plateau State. There is no victor, no vanquish. We appeal to the PDP to come and join hands with us so that we can move Plateau forward.
While evoking Section 136 of the Electoral Act, the court ordered INEC to retrieve the certificate of return issued to Governor Mutang and issue a fresh certificate of return to Goshe. As it stands, except Governor Caleb Mutang appealed the judgment at the Supreme Court, he will have to vacate his seat for APC's Nantawe Goshe. Jane Francis Mweze, TVC News, Abuja.
Our thanks to Jane Francis Mweze there for that report. It's interesting because well, first of all, you hear the lawyer speaking there, and he was alleging that, wait a minute, you can't be changing the game. It was a different matter that was held at the lower court, and now they've introduced another one, but then you heard another retort that what has happened here is a punishment for disobedience. So there are issues out there that I imagine might need to be resolved. What's your thought on that particular aspect of it? First of all, the allegation that the game was, quote unquote, changed by concentrating on a different matter.
Well, like you correctly mentioned, there are a couple of separate aspects to the whole case. And one of the primary aspects, I think the one that we are focusing on, or that the whole conversation has been around, is the fact that the PDP nomination process was flawed. And I think that we should not even focus on that presently, because there are lots of underlying issues and separate issues apart from that. Part of the issues being that we have even moved on from the talks of the nomination process, which, as some analysts have correctly pointed out, can also be interpreted as a totally internal party affair. But right now, we are talking about non-adherence to the court ruling, which has moved from beyond a party affair to a constitutional affair. So at that...
I think the judge said that was a joke gone too far.
Exactly.
You know, that's
exactly.
Non-obedience to a valid court order.
And there have been multiple court orders on the same issue, starting from 2020, when Honorable Bitrus Kaze and 11 others instituted a court case against PDP and 24 others in Plateau State to say that the whole Congress procedure, which led to the emergence of an ESCO in August 2020, was not valid. And the court agreed with him. So fast forward to 2021, when PDP was about to joined the Plateau State local government elections. They were denied the opportunity to participate in the elections in 2021 as a result of the petition that was written by PDP members to the Plateau State Electoral Commission. So the court had said, no, there is a subsisting court judgment far back as 2020, which said you cannot sponsor candidates for elections because you yourself, you were not validly elected in the first place. So it's like trying to build something on nothing. So that was the court position in 2021. PDP itself, the mainstream PDP in Plateau State, went further to the appeal court in that same 2021 to say, please, set this thing aside. And the appeal court said, no, we cannot set this aside. You must comply with the two previous provisions of the court on this same matter. So the appeal court turned them down, and that is like 3 different verdicts now against PDP. And it's unfortunate that they did not read the room. They did not decide to comply. That same ESCO that has had 3 verdicts against it still tried to appeal to the Supreme Court on that same case, but the Supreme Court said, no, you did not follow the right procedure, and even the process for appealing had expired. The timeline for appealing had expired before you came to us. So the appeal court threw out the case for lack of merit. The Supreme Court rather threw out the case for lack of merit. So everybody, all the parties involved, have now been relying on the verdict of the Court of Appeal on the case, which had said clearly that the PDP ESCO in Plateau was not properly constituted or elected. So now it was a surprise to everybody. This issue had been there even before Dr. Nentawe went to court. The issue had been there. People have been saying, is this not going to be a repeat of the Zamfara case? So it's a whole big surprise to us all that PDP is insisting on doing the arbitrary. You had all the time. There were 3 years between 2020 when all of these things started within PDP, and now when it has gone to this stage. And also on the part that it's an internal PDP matter.
Yes.
It's no longer an internal PDP matter.
Well, when you say that, because Justice Williams Daudu, Justice Elfrida Williams Daudu, she ruled, and maybe that was surprising, that it was both. It was pre and post-election. And her lordship, having determined like that, this really throws a legal spanner in the works, doesn't it?
Well, I wouldn't say it does.
Okay.
It depends on the interpretation. And if it's being interpreted that there's a conflict somewhat in it, then it means the interpretation is not being done right. And that's the aspect that much of the conversation has centered on. And on that interpretation affair, where we are getting it wrong is when we talk about it in the context of PDP primaries. But we are talking about, congresses, but we are talking about it in the context of disobedience to the Constitution. Not the PDP thing anymore. There have been 3 court verdicts against these people. So for them to disobey those court verdicts and against the provision of the Constitution, first, even the people who disobeyed the verdicts directly could be held in contempt. Okay. So it's no longer a PDP thing, but a constitutional thing against the law of the land.
Because
so they're totally on the wrong side of it, disobeying 3 different verdicts, saying, go back and do Congress, go back and do Congress. No, the lower court said you should go back and do Congress. Go and do it. But they keep doing the same thing and refusing to do it. So it becomes difficult to understand what exactly the cry from the PDP side is about.
Indeed, because we're not lawyers here necessarily, but this little bit of it is clear. Justice Elfrida Williams Daudu held that the governor was not validly sponsored by the PDP for the election, and that the PDP has not complied with a subsisting High Court order. So this is a problem. But okay, let's look at it from another aspect, from the APC aspect. We have another report. Let's play that.
Supporters of the All Progressive Congress are celebrating the judgment of the appeal court governorship election in Plateau State. The appellate court on Sunday ordered that INEC recognize Nentawe Goshwet of the APC as elected governor of Plateau State in the March 18 governorship election. Justice Elfrida Daudu, who led a 3-member panel, delivered the lead judgment and cited Section 177 of the Constitution, pointing out that Mr. Mutfwang was not validly sponsored by PDP during the election. It is a celebratory moment for supporters of the All Progressive Congress in Plateau State who have thronged the streets in the state capital to celebrate their victory.
Actually, concerning the appeal court judgment today, I was very, very, very happy. Indeed, we allowed the rule of law to take its course because we are not God. It is God that institutes law in the land. So we have to abide by the law of the land. In fact, I am very, very excited. I don't know how to even quantify my happiness.
Seriously, I'm happy about this judgment. And my prayer is that if Nentawe comes, he should first Plateau first, not tribalism, not Christianity, not anything, but he should face his work, and may God help him.
This is something we've been waiting for quite some time, and today it has come, so we are celebrating it.
We so much, believe in the sanctity and also the supremacy of the judiciary, and we took to the appeal, hoping that we're going to get justice in the appeal. And luckily for us, and a judgment has been served, and we're happy on this.
Already, security operatives are stationed within flashpoint across the state capital to prevent any attempt by mischief makers to take advantage of the situation in the state to cause trouble. Phonom Joshua, TVC News, Jos.
Okay, so that's another point of view, and it's important. Do you have, even though you are based in Lagos, what are the reports that you have about the climate back home in Plateau State? Are people carrying on being supportive of the rule of law, that this is what the court has said? So as those respondents in that video seem to indicate,
of course.
Everything is...
I happen to be in touch with happenings there. I was in Plateau State 2 weeks ago, so I understand the mode and all that. And of course, even from the layman's perspective, as you've just heard people say on TV, it's pretty much clear. Okay, when Justice Alfreda made her pronouncement, it was a unanimous judgment. All of the justices were in agreement that, okay, this is the right provisions, and yes, the interpretation was according to their judicial opinions. So, she mentioned the provisions of Section 177, subsection C, which insists that a candidate must be validly nominated. And in addition to that, even the provisions of the Electoral Act of 2022 made it clear in Section 134, subsection B, that the process of nomination must be flawless. Otherwise, a candidate can stand to be disqualified. And apart from that nomination process, some of the grounds of the current appeal by Dr. Nentawe Goshwe mentioned that there were overvoting in a couple of local government areas in Plateau State. Okay, the state has 17 local government areas, and the current case in court insists that overvoting took place in 9 local government areas, Bokos, Barkinladi, Just North, Just South, Langtang, North, like 9 local government areas totally. So when you look at it from that perspective, you know that, okay, this is not just about a technical interpretation of the Constitution, but the real issues, even regarding the vote numbers, are there also. So the handing over, or so to speak, the order of the court of appeal to give a certificate of return to Nentawe cannot even be seen from the social or the moral angle to be wrong. Because if you look at the vote spread also, as you had mentioned earlier, Dr. Nentawe had gotten 481,000 votes as against the 525,000 gotten by Barrister Caleb Mutfwang. So that vote, the 481,000 vote, is spread across all of those 17 local government areas. And the election was literally a neck-to-neck thing.
Yeah.
So Dr. Nentawe has his own support base as well. And like I mentioned, part of the grounds of his appeal is that they were overvoting in 9 local government areas, more than half of the local government areas in the state. So if perhaps in the appeal court ruling, if the appeal court decides or rules that those places where overvoting happened, the excess votes should be taken off if it's eventually proven, you could find that the votes that have been already recorded for Dr. Nentawe could go significantly higher than the 481,000, while the 525,000 that were recorded for Barrister Caleb Mutfwang could drop significantly. And in such a situation, you could find Nentawe ahead of Dr. Caleb Mutfwang. So considering the fact that it was such a close race, and with the allegations of the overvoting, if it is substantiated, he could be ahead of Dr. Caleb. So I'm not surprised to see that people are celebrating in Plateau State, considering the fact that, okay, he got serious support. It wasn't a fluke. He's still coming from far behind to be made governor or something. So I feel the social mood there is not surprising because people supported him. He has this massive support. So it's a fair thing to me. I'm not surprised to see that people are celebrating that.
But the governor is still in place, understandably, because there still is the option, if he decides to take it, of going another step. It's like, if you want, one side won the first round, another side won the second round. So now we can go for the final round if indeed the losing contestant decides that it is worth his while or their while to go like that. I don't know if you're hearing anything, although it's not your business to be watching what the PDP is doing, but do you have any indication of how this might go?
Going by all of the previous precedences, it's very difficult for electoral candidates to not go the whole hog, like go all the way to the Supreme Court. But then I am super positive in this specific case because I believe that for the Supreme Court usually has a record of not, of course, there are instances where it overrules the decisions of lower courts, but usually it upholds. And then I'm not surprised in this particular case, and I'm not worried because PDP in Plateau State specifically has not even shown itself to be competent in matters like this. Remember that when it had a similar issue ahead of the local government elections in 2021, PDP in Plateau State went as far as the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court threw out its case, saying it wasn't proper and all of that. So if the Supreme Court in 2021 had thrown out a similar case brought by Plateau State PDP, what are the chances that the same PDP in Plateau State, which is still the same party, could succeed this time, seeing that the grounds of the case are still very similar to what was the situation in 2021? So from my own perspective, I'm not even afraid or worried. I feel it's a done deal for Dr. Nentawe, apart from the APC side and all coming in, but it's just factual that he would scale through at the Supreme Court.
Okay, well, that's understandably, that's the way you would see it, but you saw the lawyers from the PDP side there making their own, speaking as a submission outside of court that they didn't believe that all this was particularly kosher. The way they are looking at it is that the ball game, so to speak, in the tribunal is different from where there's now a preponderance of consideration. Now, that was just their point of view. But how INEC has been instructed, directed, or what is the proper word? Anyway, it's now a force of law because the Justice Elfrida Williams Daudu, her court, said that INEC should withdraw the certificate of returns that had been issued and reissue it, not reissue it, prepare a fresh one and issue that to the candidate of the APC. What's the time frame within which INEC is probably going to be waiting to see also if there's an appeal because it doesn't want to be going up and down, I imagine. But before you respond to that, I believe that we have a caller. Good morning, Mr. George.
Yori, and good morning to Mr. Ode.
Yes.
Uncle Yori, the case of Plateau State is a lesson-driven one. The governor may have won that election in terms of number of votes he got, but you can't build something on nothing. The key point of the court decision is that his party failed to do what the court directed it to do. You were asked to go and conduct congresses, which is a prerequisite for primaries and eventual elections. You failed to do it, at least in full. We are told that out of 19 or so, he did only 5. And you now went into elections. How do you now want to win and retain your seat when the basis of the victory is flawed? It's just not possible. The impunity of our politicians needs to be checked. Because if you look, Uncle Yori, time after time, the politicians tend to believe that they are above the law and due process because of desperation to win. Why can't they learn lessons from the case of the president? The president, see the way he went about the pre-primary, the primary, the elections, and post-election. His opponents hired 69 fans to force his election, to force the process. They couldn't find any. At the end of the day, they went to the university he attended. Those ones gave them the certificate he obtained. They said his certificate is fake. The one that issued the certificate told you that we are the ones that issued this certificate. This person was our student. They were doing all that because they couldn't find anything in the process. It should be like that. Why can't others learn a lesson from this? The same thing that the APC did in Zamfara. You remember? In 2019, they won all the seats in the Legislative Assembly and won the governorship. But when the case went to the court, the Supreme Court says you didn't follow the right process. And at the end of the day, all the victories they attained, the PDP inherited it. One would have expected others to learn from such lessons. But these things keep recurring and recurring. So let justice, in my view, let justice take its turn. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I saw that you were nodding in agreement to most of the things that were being said there. So it would seem to me that you completely endorse that position. But let's talk about, there was something else, what I said, maybe let's wait for this caller to come in before. Okay, let me just go to, what is the part of INEC in all of this? Because the, returning officer did indeed declare for, the PDP's candidate. And now INEC itself is being asked. It can only be asked because it was done in the eyes of the law erroneously to, withdraw it, correct that situation. At least we're talking legally now. What are your thoughts there?
Well, the thing is that INEC is doing what it can do. It has to conduct elections. During the last elections, of course, over 177,000 polling units across the country. That's a lot of logistics to deploy. And at the same time, at the time of the elections, nobody had said, Dr. Caleb Mutfwang is not qualified to be a candidate in these elections. But regardless, even if he wasn't qualified, the PDP is still on the ballot and they would have gone to the elections. So there was no legal restraint on the part of INEC to prevent them from issuing the certificate of return to Dr. Mutfwang after the election. So as far as I'm concerned, INEC is still on the right track. It is only now that certain issues which were lingering behind the scenes have been brought to light by the APC side and Dr. Nentawi that INEC can now, in obedience to the order by Justice Alfreda and the rest of the legal team, can withdraw the certificate of return, because INEC cannot on its own say, when you did your primaries, the court had said INEC is not like that. It has to go by what the law is saying. And of course, there was nothing stopping them from conducting and issuing that certificate of return. And if this issue had not been brought to light by the APC side, that constitutional aberration, so to speak, could have gone ahead undetected and unnoticed. So it is only now that it has been brought to light and a valid court order has been made that INEC can, in line with the court order, proceed to withdraw the certificate of return if an appeal is not made, I think within the 14-day period that they have to appeal to the Supreme Court.
Indeed. And as that caller, Mr. George, has said, he referred to a legalism that we've come to hear quite frequently in our discussions of these political situations in the court about you can't build something on nothing, if the nothing is the position of the law as a more fact-based, the respondents are saying that, it's the appellants are saying that there wasn't even a candidate in the first place, I believe, that there wasn't even a candidate on the first. This now leads to Mr. George saying that you can hardly build something on nothing.